Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of That's Curious with Shay and Lloyd. On this episode, we have a very special guest, Shirley Buck. Shirley is a internationally best-selling author. Her book, "Sweet Freedom Whispered in My Ear," talks about some very intense trauma, um, high-level abuse, and what she went through throughout her life journey, and how she has turned that around and changed her perspective, which has led her to become a mindset transformation coach. It was a really great interview. Somebody that has taken something pretty bad and turned it into a very, very positive mindset. Really compelling story.
It's always super refreshing to be able to meet people and just be able to sit down with them and hear their raw, real life perspective and see how they have been able to overcome stuff that, a lot of us aren't able to just talk about. I feel like there needs to be more voices and more opportunity for, people to be able to express themselves in this way and to know that whatever it is that you've gone through, that you can transform your mind and transform your life to make it positive. So I'm super excited for her to be here and be an advocate for that and to talk about her course and additional ways that she's able to help people even for free if you want to have a consultation with her, and just kind of, get to know her a little bit and just have someone to talk to. So it's been an honor and a privilege to have her. I would love you guys to stick around to hear her story. It is absolutely life changing and inspiring. So without further ado, Shirley Buck. Okay, so welcome, Shirley. I'm super excited to have you here. And I would just like to start
Thank
off
you.
with, who are you and what is it that you do?
Well, my name is Shirley Buck. I like to say that I'm a survivor, but not only a survivor, but an overcomer of severe abuse, and trauma. And I'm also an international best-selling author, which really excites me because I tell my story and I want to get it out there to as many people as possible who have maybe been through trauma and abuse, but not even limited to that. Maybe someone who's just has a hard time with self love and having a positive mindset through things that may have been experiencing.
Yeah.
But I just want to get my story out there as an inspiration to people. And I became a mindset transformation coach to help others who struggle with their daily tasks, just, depression, anxiety, overcoming trauma and abuse, things like that.
Shirley, you said about your story and your book, "The Sweet Freedom Whispered in My Ear." Can you tell us a little bit about that book and what that's about and the trauma that you personally experienced and why that book was written?
Okay, yes, the book is my story of my childhood and what I've experienced. I was born to deaf parents, and that in itself poses challenges because you have to be their ears and their voice at a very young age. I interpreted my parents' divorce when I was 5 years old. So that kind of gives you an idea of the responsibility that was put on me as a child. Um, and by the time I was 8, almost 9 years old, my mother had become an alcoholic and an abusive alcoholic, physically and emotionally abusive when she was drunk. When
Mm.
she wasn't drinking, she really felt bad and would apologize. And it was the alcohol who, had taken over for her. And she had a lot of anger, and she was a deaf child that was hidden in the bedroom when company came over because they were ashamed that they had a deaf child. So she was very insecure to begin with. And I think the divorce with my father kind of pushed her over the edge. And she married a terrible man who talked her into selling our home that my father had given us. And he pretty much took the money and put us in a really crappy apartment and took off, and we never seen him again. So, but he molested me as a child as well. And he was just a really bad person. And I think that really pushed her over the edge. And she committed suicide when I was 13, and she tried to take my life. And she committed suicide in a very violent way, which kind of to me talks about how much anger she had towards herself, because women, when they commit suicide, they usually put on their makeup, fix their hair. They don't want to be found in a disarray, but that was not the case with her. She had stabbed herself repeatedly in the stomach and throat and was very close to taking my life. She was very violent with me as well. So that was probably my first super traumatic. I mean, I was going through trauma before then, as far as, I never had toys. I wasn't the kid, like my friends would come over and like, where's your toys and stuff like that. I was more like the interpreter. My stereo was my thing. I loved to dance. In my show and tell, I would play the records on my show and tell 45s, and music was a savior to me. But that was probably the most traumatic thing that I had experienced up until the age of 13. And when she died, I moved in with my father, who was just recently married. And they had a child, my half sister, way before they ever got married. They even broke up, and she was 7 years old when they reconnected and got married, which was probably about a few months before my mom had died. And when I moved in, my stepmom was not prepared to take on my father's daughter. And she didn't let me eat there, wash my clothes there.
Wow.
Yeah, if my dad put a plate of food in front of me, she'd storm off or take the plate and throw it in the sink. And she was deaf as well. And she would lock herself in the bedroom. And it was always this chaotic thing going on between her and my dad. And I finally started telling my dad, look, I'm just going to go hang out with my friends and, don't worry about it. I didn't want him fighting. And my dad and I, we really loved each other and we had a good relationship, but he wasn't the best dad. He wasn't the best father. I was very in awe of him. He was deaf and yet worked for the city of Chicago. He was the only deaf person on the payroll at the time. He had rode his Harley to almost all the states in the United States.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, he was a pretty remarkable guy. He just wasn't a great father, a father figure, but
Right.
I loved him. I still love him. What am I saying? So anyway, he was more than happy to have me, be out there, and my half sister would leave the window open for me, and so I would unlocked for me so I could come in and out and sleep at night, things like that. She would leave little taffy apples outside for me or something for me to eat, things like that. So she was really cool. I started working at 13 for a grocery store owner, a little neighborhood grocery store, and he would give me $10 a day, a pack of cigarettes, for working there. And I would go there after school, and I would be there about 8 hours because he'd be open till 9 o'clock at night. But he molested me for 2 years as well. And one thing I want to say is sometimes teenagers or children are caught and they're a victim, but it's like their only friend is the one that is taking advantage of them. The only person being good to them is also harming them. So they get into a very confusing part of their life where they're like, well, this person's good to me, but 15 minutes out of the day, I guess I can handle this, because he'd be like, go clean the meat cleaner in the back. And I knew what that meant. And you just kind of turn yourself off and just get through it. And then you go back to this person who's nice to you, who brings you food, who, so children, unfortunately are easy prey, especially if they don't have a good foundation at home. And sometimes it happens even if they do have a good foundation at home. So it's good to really, really talk to your kids and know where they're at and know what's going on all the time.
I know, I'll be honest, I have 10 years corrections on just when inmates that had came through for molesting a child. It was always, I would say 90% of the time, it was somebody that was related to that child.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It was, I mean, that's a off the cuff statistic. I don't have the actual statistics for that, but
Right.
it was just absolutely incredible how
It's mind
You know, it's
blowing, isn't
yeah,
it?
an uncle, a cousin, a brother, a father, a mother. It was always, it wasn't, you know, I'm not saying it didn't happen because it did, but most times it was somebody that was related to the victim of that
Yeah,
abuse, man.
absolutely. Yes. Um, yeah, I was raped by a family member, and that was when I was older, probably about 16, 17, maybe. And um, yeah, my stepdad, when I was young, it almost becomes like when you're in that kind of life where it's happening to you so much, you start to think that it's normal and everybody does
Yeah.
that. And it really makes it hard for future relationships to be healthy. You kind of get into a pattern of dating the same person with a different name, right? They're not that
Mm.
great to you. Although I never got into a relationship where I did get into one, but I ended it right away. If it was physically abusive, like I knew I wanted out of all that. I didn't want to
Mm.
be in that. But there was still this part of me dating people who I was supporting, who I was taking care of, because I wanted to make sure that my home and my children's home, it was our home. So if I ever broke up with anyone and a relationship didn't last, which I never thought it would because I just didn't believe in that, I would just be like, okay, pack your bags and leave. We're safe. We have our home.
Mm.
Right.
And anyone who I dated after I divorced my children's father, um, were off limits to the kids. They were never alone with them. They couldn't even yell at them or if they were doing something wrong, they had to come to me. There was no way they were yelling at my kids. There was no way they were ever going to, you know, try to impose. I was like, this is their home,
Mm.
not yours. So I was fiercely protective of my kids, but at the same time, I really wasn't dating guys that were stepping up to the plate and being the partner that they needed to be because I was too afraid to do that.
Mm.
So, it there is there's a lot of consequences to it, and perception and mindset is huge in getting over things like that. I personally did not do traditional therapy, but I'm not saying it's wrong for anyone. I don't want to be that person. I say therapy is terrible, but I will say that I think it may have helped me quite a bit because I work with some people who've been through therapy for years, and it seems like there's this pattern of them talking about the problem, talking about the problem, talking about the whys, to focusing on the problem, focusing how does that make you feel? How does it like that's that and then when they're depressed because they're focusing on the problem so much, they say, well, here's some pills, take this will take the edge off. And it's like you get into this, you're just in this ball of focusing on the problem, taking meds, taking and then the labels come in. You have PTSD, you have depression, you have anxiety. Now that becomes your identity, and you feel doomed. Like, this is me. My identity is, I don't know how many people I talk to. I say, I have depression, I have PTSD. Okay, but that's not who you are. Inside, that's not who you are, and you can overcome it. But you have to change your mindset. You have to take yourself away from something in the past that's no longer there. And I think the most powerful thing I ever read somewhere in all the studying I've done on mindset was the past only exists if you give it thought.
Mm.
Now, if you really think about that, that's pretty powerful. There's a past that's been, horrible, terrible in some cases. And once you're out of it, when you keep putting your mind there, you're still experiencing it here. And you don't have to. It doesn't even exist anymore. The only way it exists is if you give it thought. So, I mean, that's powerful. That's like, oh yeah. So I keep thinking about this thing. So you get into this loop thinking, but there's ways of coming out of that. There's ways of focusing on things that are much more positive. It's important to change your mindset, I feel. I feel, and that's why I call it alternative healing, because I feel that people just want to focus on the terrible things in life. Like, and yeah, you're not going to be happy. You know, that's not the way out. So,
Yeah, no, I actually resonate heavily with a lot of what you've said. And I think it's very important. As somebody who's been around the mental health world for a long while and has already done her holistic studies as well, just because I was in the rat race of it all and wanted to see if there were other things that I could possibly do to just help myself and other people that have been through things similar to yours or my story, or, everyone has some type of story.
right,
I've
exactly.
come to know that. And I think it's important for people to not take those titles and be like, I am bipolar, or I am
Right,
schizophrenic, or I am.
right,
You don't have to make those kinds of statements. If you are, experiencing those things, it doesn't have to consume you. So I really appreciate you saying that and then allowing the space to also recognize, like, you can acknowledge that something has happened to you, but you don't have to live there anymore. Like,
right,
you can move
exactly.
on from it, and it may take a little bit. And I know that, things can residually live in the body and you will have to like move through things, but the longer
Right.
you stay there, the more it affects you.
Absolutely. And we also gain gifts from going through these traumas. We do. We gain a lot of gifts. So doing the work to like kind of recognize what gifts we received from these horrible things we've been through is important because I mean, independence, compassion, empathy, strength, like there's so many things. And to be able to love unconditionally as I do my children and my grandchildren, in spite of all that, is probably the biggest blessing I have, you know. And I'm fiercely protective of my children and my grandchildren. And my daughter she's the one who's always like, I'm okay, mom. Like I can handle myself. Always like ready to fight, the battles. But I also realize that they have to experience their own things too. But
Mhm.
love is a big
That's
blessing.
not easy thing for a parent to like accept, man. So
I mean,
I
I wish
felt
my
that.
kids were like that. I really do. I mean, my daughter's fiercely protective of her kids, so I think she should probably understand why I am. But she's like, I'm an adult. Like, wait till they're adult. You're still going to be fiercely
Right.
protective. Um, but yeah, there's a lot of gifts that come from trauma as well. And to be able to focus on that and focus on your good traits. And another thing that really helped me with self love, I did this exercise where I did a meditation where I went back to where some trauma was happening. For instance, when my mom was beating me up as a child. And I went back in that as in my mind as an adult, as a strong adult. And I looked at that child and I scooped her up and I'm like, no, don't believe that. You are lovable. You're strong. You have a wonderful, beautiful future ahead of you. And I just love that child. And then I realized, hey, wait a minute, that child is me. If I would do that for a child, that child's me, why won't I love myself and comfort myself and have compassion for myself? And that was an eye opener as well. It's like, because if you can go in and, we may have another child or another person that we love that we would protect. So kind of put yourself as that person. Like I wouldn't want that person going through it. Why am I allowing myself to? Why
Right
don't I
on.
love myself? So then you start to do the work on why don't I love myself? And then you dig into the gifts that you've received and you just have to kind of change your mindset. And I feel like today, although I don't want to give a crutch, like the outside world is the reason we are, can't get better. I don't, because anyone can get better no matter what the outside circumstances are. But I will say that we live in a society where the news is terrible all the time. It's just bad news, bad news, bad news. Billboards, talking about illness all the time, I mean, we're the only country that actually has commercials that say, "Ask your doctor about this pill." Like,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, meds are just flying off the shelves to everybody, and um, you kind of have to turn that off. Like, I don't watch the news. I know what's going on through emails and different news snippets or whatever, but I don't lose myself into what's going on in the world, because there's so much division and anger because media has supported all that. And I mean, how could you just like, go to work, come home, pay your bills, watch terrible news, and then go to sleep and then go to work, and you're like in that rut? Of course you're depressed.
Yeah,
You know,
right.
did you take time to turn the news off? Maybe turn on some music, maybe dance, people who like to dance, or maybe paint, or, do these things we used to love to do as a child and incorporate that into your adult life. There's no rule that says you can't, right? So,
Mhm.
um, although there is a lot of things going on out there that's terrible, and I feel like that's just fueled so much for ratings of the media and all this. There's a lot of beauty out there. There's a lot of great people out there. Why not focus on that?
Hmm.
Why focus on the bad? So it's just a way of, and in my 3-month course, the course actually goes through weekly lessons with daily activities to help you change your mindset. And I have weekly sessions with them as they're going through the course, not necessarily about the course unless they have questions about the course. The course is simple because changing your mindset is a simple process. It's not easy, but it's a very simple process. And the weekly session is more geared towards customizing what goals you want to reach, and talking about that and finding ways to do that outside of the course too. Um, so, and the reason I became a mindset transformation coach is because I mean, I didn't know while I was studying mindset that was my goal. I didn't know. I mean, I was always told, write a book, write a book, write a book, but I never wrote a book. I'm not an author, like I just never really thought about it. And then one of my clients, because I'm also a Reiki master, and I don't like to use the word master. I wish they'd come up with a better word than that, because
I
it
agree.
makes it feel like, oh, I've accomplished everything. Now I'm still learning about Reiki. I'm not, but if you don't say master, then they think that you don't know what you're doing. And it's just such a crazy thing. But anyway, I have a client who I was there doing Reiki. And, afterwards we were talking and she goes, why don't you write a book? And I said, I think I will. And I just feel like it was just the right time. And I went home and I started writing, and it just all flew out. It just, then I had to find a publisher, which is kind of like you trying to become a star in Hollywood. Like they won't even talk to you at all. They'll just only talk to an agent. So then you got to try to find an agent. It's just, I said, no, I really looked into what independent publishing would do for me. And what
Mhm.
it did for me that I really liked was I have the rights to my book. Nobody can do what they want with it. They have to come to me. And I felt like with a story like that, it has to be that way. You know, um, People were saying, oh, if you should go through a publisher, it might become a movie and this and that. I'm like, well, I don't want anyone making a movie of it without me having the rights to it,
Yeah,
because
right.
who knows what they're going to make out of it. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
So, um,
And
I
even if you
found it.
did want to make a movie, there are independent filming
Yeah,
artists.
right.
You know what I
Yeah,
mean? So if you keep
exactly.
it
Yeah.
completely independent.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's the better way to go. But
Mhm.
anyway, um, I mean, the book is just a year old in October, so I'm not even
Oh
thinking
wow,
about that yet.
congratulations.
But thank you, and that's my birth year as well. So it was actually published on my best friend, who's been my best friend since I was 9 years old. It was published on her birthday, so it was
Oh,
kind of
that's
cool.
fun.
Yeah, but anyway, um, when I found the publisher, I found she was very warm, very kind, just a really great publisher. And when I wrote everything, I just wrote everything, the whole story, and I gave it to them to edit. I said, only because at first I was trying to edit. She's like, it's not your job to edit. It's your job to just write it. So I wrote it, and I said, okay, all I want you to change is any grammatical or, commas, periods. If I missed anything, like, please fix that. But I want it to be my voice, my word. I don't want you changing the way something is said. So they did that. And she said, can I give you a suggestion? Because reading it, it was just like trauma, 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 trauma. She's like, it's too much. She's like, so at the end of each chapter, put a little reprieve in there, put about, maybe talk about how you maybe had gotten over that, or how you worked through this, or, I was like, oh, that's a great idea. So working with her was wonderful. And I also feel like maybe subconsciously I knew it was okay to write it now, because I don't live there anymore. So I don't sit there. And so I was actually afraid to write it, because I was like, ooh, I'm going to go back and revisit all this stuff that I don't live there anymore. I don't focus on that. I don't make that my identity. So it was kind of hard to walk that line, to put it out there, get my story out there. And then I do podcasts and things like that. So I'm revisiting things. So I have to kind of walk that line of not living there, but yet living here,
Yeah.
But I think what made it safe for me is having grandchildren, because they would keep me here when I had to go there. I have them twice a week. They spend the night on Thursday nights, and they just laugh so much, and they smile so much, and they bring so much good energy into my life that I'm like, yeah, this is where I want to be. Yeah. I want to be a kid. I want to play with them. I want to jump on the bed with them. I want to do all this stuff with them. So, I think the universe, God, whatever source, whatever anyone wants to call it, knows when it's the right time and puts you in that path. And it was the right time. And so then I said, I don't only want to write the book, I want to help, inspire other people to find different ways to come out of whatever they're struggling with. And I had one client come to me and said, I was afraid to come to you because I didn't really suffer a lot of trauma, but I'm always depressed and I can't get out of it. And I'm like, oh God, I don't want people to think they can only come to me if they've suffered trauma and abuse. I was like, no, everybody, like you said earlier, has a story. Everybody has a reason they feel the way they feel. And it doesn't have to be terrible trauma. It could be anything. Just learning how to transform your mindset helps in a lot of different ways. And that was what saved me, because I had a nervous breakdown when I was 23 and I didn't know if I was going to make it or not. It was either sink or swim, because I could not live in that constant terror of, I'm going to go crazy. I'm going to go, something is not right. I just lost it. I lost it. And I wrote about that in a book. And I did not want to go to a therapist, because I was already knowing I don't want to keep thinking about this. I don't want to keep talking about it. I just want to get better, and I started just getting my hands on every self-help book that I could. And I think the first one that really, really started to help me was the Feel Good Handbook. And I just started, it made me feel like not so alone, because he talked about all these people with all these, what you would call irrational fears, but they're real in your mind, right? So like I started feeling, okay, I'm not alone. Just like music made me feel, like a sad song, I'd be like, well, they didn't write this song because nobody ever felt this. I felt connected because they're feeling hurt. They're feeling pain. And I felt like I'm not alone. So these books kind of helped me realize, okay, this is not as abnormal as I think it is. And then I started to realize why I was feeling these things and how I could change my mindset. And I was just so hungry for the knowledge of how to think, because nobody teaches that. They kind of teach you, put everyone first, not yourself. It's because it's selfish. Don't do that. And they teach you kind of to be a martyr. And then they feed all these bad news into you. Then they tell you how you're supposed to look to be pretty, how you're supposed to speak to be accepted. Like that, you're like so conditioned to think the wrong way. And then they want you to go get on meds, and it's like a whole system. I'm like, wait a minute. I had to learn how to think.
Mm-hmm.
Learning how to think should not be that hard, but it was very hard. and and I think, these poor children that go to school like that, nobody teaches you to take care of yourself. The airlines do. They say put your mask on first before you put a mask on someone else, right? You
Mm-hmm.
have to take care of yourself and love yourself before you can be a truly productive person for anyone else.
My daughter always says to me, she's like, when you start the day, you have a cup of water. And she's like, it could be a full cup, it could be a half a cup, but whatever you start your day with, you start with a cup of water. And she's like, it's okay to let other people drink from your cup, so long as that you aren't thirsty. And I was like, my
Yep.
daughter's 13. My daughter's 13. And
There
I
you
thought,
go. I
I
love
looked at
it.
her and I was like,
Perfect.
like, are you like Ram Dass right now
Yeah.
here? What's going on? Like,
Well, I
but
love that.
that's,
I
but
love
that
that.
you have to be that way. You have to tell people like, listen, I love you, and you're part of my network. You're part of my inner circle. You're my fam. But I only have this little bit of water left. So today, I'm just gonna have to put you on hold. Get a hold of me
Yeah.
tomorrow, man. And some people like what's going on? But like, listen, just not trying to be rude, but just respect the boundaries today.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll try again tomorrow.
And that's okay.
Yeah,
It's okay.
yeah.
It's okay. And it's okay. And another thing that starts happening when you start thinking right and thinking good thoughts and becoming happy and loving yourself, a lot of people disappear from your life.
Mm.
They do. And the hardest thing to understand is it's okay. They're no longer serving a purpose in your life. It's okay if they disappear. And if they're supposed to be realigned someday, they may, but you have to be happy with yourself. You have to want to be in good company, not just any company,
Right.
So there's a lot of changes that take place when you become positive and happy. And it's strange, and it's not always something you're comfortable with. It's not always something you're accustomed to. But
I always told Shay I called that shedding. That's the way. Like as you elevate and evolve or vibrate higher, whatever way you want to call
yeah,
it, man, certain people in your life will exit. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, man. I don't think it's ever a bad thing. Everything that happens in life, in my opinion, is perfect. That's the way
yeah,
there's nothing bad. Everything is supposed to happen the way it's supposed to. And
right,
people do come to your life, man, for a short time. They're only there for a moment or two to help you for whatever way, man. It could be something, I always tell people, I bring up the story of when my ex-wife and I got pregnant. We used to do karaoke at this bar all the time. And when we got pregnant, we told everybody at the bar, hey, this is our last karaoke. We're pregnant. We're saying goodbye. Much love. And this gentleman came over who we had not ever seen, said, can I offer you a prayer? And we will take whatever prayers from anybody, anytime. You know what I mean?
right.
Any type of thing like that, please pray for me, So we're like, yeah. The guy gave us like maybe a 30-second, 1-minute prayer. He's like, God bless you, and walked out. I've never seen this guy since, before, ever. And all I can tell you is that I still remember that moment very
It touches
vividly.
your heart,
Right,
right?
right. But that guy was in my life for about 1 minute. And yet I remember him for 13 years, 14 years. So like I said, man,
Absolutely.
it's shedding, you know what I mean? It doesn't necessarily have to be negative, but
Right.
people come in and out of your life for reasons, man. It's to either elevate you, make you more aware, teach. They're there to teach, man.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And there's a lot of lessons to be learned, even from things that weren't so great, relationships that weren't so great. Um, yeah, it's definitely, it's a whole, when they say like change your mind, change your life, it sounds like a cliche. Man, it's so real. And I like what you said
Yeah.
about how you vibrate, because when you're vibrating on a higher level, you're attracting things on the same vibration. When you're focusing on lack, you get more of lack because you're vibrating on that, scale. And I talk about being aware of your emotional scale in my course, because if you're not feeling good, stop and think about what you are thinking about. What is your thought process? Where are you at on your emotional scale? Because if you're feeling good, you got good thoughts. If you're feeling bad, you got bad thoughts. And you can be in between, which is kind of like autopilot, which is dangerous as well. But I'm not saying that I'm always on this high, emotional part of my life. Like I'm not always, oh wow, everything's wonderful, beautiful. But most of the time I am. And
so every day is not a Disney cartoon. I mean,
no, not at all.
yeah.
But when I'm feeling that way, I know that I'm focusing on something that may not be going exactly the way I want it to in life. And it may not be, something may be off and then I start to think about what am I focusing on? Okay, that's what I'm focusing on. Can I do something about it today? No? Okay, well, then I'm going to focus on this. And sometimes when you take your mind off of the problem, it resolves itself. But when you focus on it, you're making it bigger and bigger and bigger. And that's all about vibration. And that the laws of attraction and manifestation is something else I teach, but it's after the course because you don't start at a place where you're feeling depressed and anxious and then learn about the laws of attraction. Like you can't make that. I couldn't make that jump. When it's right, it comes into your life. Like all these lessons at the right time will present itself. Whether you open yourself up to it or not is up to you. But it does, things will start coming to you. And when you're searching for something, it will come,
Yeah, I always like to revert myself back to these beautiful rules of fives of like, is this going to affect me for 5 minutes, 5 hours, 5 days, 5 months, 5 years? How long do I
Yeah,
really want to dwell on this? Do I want to put a bunch of energy into it? So that's just something that
right.
definitely like helped me. I'm like, if this is not going to bother me or affect my life for 5 minutes from now, I really got to let that shit go.
Yes,
you know?
exactly. And that's great. See how things you need to know do come to you and they stay in your mind because it's like, okay, this is helpful to me. I need this. And I think that the world is kind of coming to that point where people are understanding more holistic ways. They're searching for more holistic ways. They're searching for a better way than what's been fed to us for so many years. And I really hope that that's the case. I mean, that's what I see, that's what I focus on. So that's how my world is. But I do see a lot of positive things going on. I do.
Shirley, I have a question, and I just want to hit back because you said about self-love. Okay, and I actually I presented this to my family once. We were all around the table having dinner. My brother was in visiting, and I said, you know, one of the things that has helped me is looking in the mirror and saying 3 nice things about myself to start my day. And I did this because I'd seen this challenge from a podcaster, and
Right.
he's like, do this. And he's like, I'm not saying you're gonna have the best day or a bad day. He's like, all I want you to do is do this, and see if your day was better than if you didn't do it. He's like, do it for a week and see how it works. And I can unequivocally, without doubt, say my week was a lot better than the days I didn't do it. And
Yeah.
two, I figured out a little bit about myself. And I started learning, like, what do I like about myself, man? And it starts superficially, as a man, I guess we are very, visual. So I like my eyes, man. I was like, hey, you
Right.
got gorgeous bedroom eyes, man. I was like,
Yeah.
and you know what I noticed? I was complimenting myself, and the grin started. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
oh yeah,
Yeah. Exactly.
and then it starts like, hey man, you're a pretty decent writer. You're okay. You can write a little bit. Then it
Right.
started like, you take care of your mom. You're trying to be and then it started to flow. And then
Right.
so I did the same challenge to my family. I said, name 3 nice things about yourself. Not one of them could do it. And I was like, dude, I can name 5 nice things about you. They're like, okay, go ahead. And I went around the room easily and gave 5 nice things that and their jaws
Right.
just dropped. I'm like, my God, man, you guys don't see how beautiful, like, do you not see what I see? Because don't get me wrong, everybody has flaws, man.
Oh, of course.
That's the human experience.
Not me, but
Yeah.
no. I'm kidding.
But
Kidding.
Never.
no, but it's like I don't think people see the impact, and I think that's human nature. You don't understand that it could be something simple as your own family member talking during a dark time to something as simple as returning a shopping cart for an old lady that maybe doesn't have any interaction. You know, maybe everybody's gone in her life. She has no friends, nothing. She's going home to her cat. And because you took a moment to do one nice, kind thing, that elated that individual. So it's just funny, man. Like, people have a really hard time with self-love. And you hit on earlier, it's like we're conditioned that if you say a nice thing about yourself, you're a narcissist, or if you're trying to do something for yourself. Yeah. And it's like, no, man, you have to learn to love yourself first before you can go out and start loving other people. You don't even know how to do it. Yeah, if you don't know how to love yourself first, how are you going to do it with other people?
I know. I told a lady in the coffee shop, I said, "Oh man, I love those boots." And she was like, "Oh, they're very cheap. I had them forever. I didn't spend a lot on them." And I was like, "Wow." She's like apologizing for her having something I like. I thought she was going to take them off and give them to me. I was like, "Oh, I just like your boots, you know."
That's funny you say that. I went,
yeah.
I went and got shoes one time, and the checkout lady, she had Beetlejuice nails, like her nails done. And I was like, "Oh wow, cool! Your nails are cool. It's Beetlejuice." She looked up at me, dead in the eyes, like water started. She's like, "Oh, I just had them," and she's looking at, didn't know how to handle a compliment. You know, just did not hand. And I walked out of there. I know she felt good, but I felt probably even better. I was like, dude, I made that person feel really cool. And I just thought her nails were cool, man. I like Beetlejuice. It was cool that she did a Beetlejuice nail. That's all it was. It was, but
isn't that sad though to think about?
Yeah, man.
People, and we don't compliment each other enough, I think, too. You know, like, just, it should be a natural thing. You know, my grandchildren, like, we're always telling them, "Oh, that's a great job. Wow, you're so smart. Oh, you're just so kind." You're like, we're always complimenting them because we want them to know it's okay to love yourself. It's okay to be complimented, you know, and they're just such happy little beings. But
okay, I was going to say, on the realm of like complimenting people, it's something that I've done for a really long time, and I've actually had friends be like, "That's really weird and kind of annoying that you like go out of your way to compliment people." Said I'm not friends with those people anymore. But I think it's a beautiful thing. I mean, I was even in the dollar store the other day, and I passed this older woman, and I saw that she was like wearing this teal shirt, and it made her eyes pop, and she had red hair, and she was just looking gorgeous as ever. And so I told her that I really loved her shirt and that it brought out her eyes, and she just looked like she had never been given a compliment ever. And she walked over to her daughter, and she was like, "That girl just made my day." And I was like, that was so sweet. See, it's not that difficult, and I feel like we're so deeply conditioned to like not care about ourselves, and it's really unfortunate that like we aren't able to like look in the mirror and really see what it is that we have to offer without that becoming something negative. Like, it's really sad.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And yeah, it should be a normal thing, you know. And I just walk my dog and I try to say hello to some people. Don't even want to look at you, you know. It's like, okay, like, it just like, I'm sorry that they're like that, because it's, who taught you that it's not okay to just say good morning to somebody, that it's, you know. And
I had a conversation like that with my mom. I think a lot of people, man, I mean, even myself included, you know, live life a lot of time, make decisions based on fear. You know, when, you arrive 15 minutes early because you have the fear that they're going to look bad if you're, or you dress a certain way because you have the fear that you don't fit in, or, I think a fear dictates us a lot. You know what I mean? And you hit the nail on the head, man. I think the balance is love. It's like, man, it's okay. Whatever happens, I got you. It's, and I think it's that mindset, like, if that, and being present, like you said, anxiety's in the future, depression's in the past. If you're worrying about, oh, this might happen, well, none of that happened. It's not even happened yet. It's not even here yet. And then if you're like, oh, this happened, yeah, it did. Let it go, man. Be here now.
My grandmother used to say 90% of the things you worry about don't even come true. So don't bother. Like, you know. And it's true. We do, like, something happens and all of a sudden we snowball, like, what, this could happen, you know. And I know somebody like that who's just constantly right away goes to, oh, this could happen. Oh, It hasn't happened yet. Back up, you know, because when you do that, you're actually giving the chance of that happening a better odds because you're vibrating on that, oh, everything's going to go wrong. And that could happen because you're kind of geared towards it happening, and you're looking for things that will validate that this is terrible, you know, and you're going to find them if you're looking for them. But if you're also like, you know, there are worse things going on in the world, there are people suffering from a lot worse things than this, you know, this is an inconvenience. A lot of times whatever we're experiencing is an inconvenience, not a catastrophe, but we make an inconvenience a catastrophe, which is unfortunate because there's always going to be inconveniences happening in your life. So you have to kind of know, okay, this is an inconvenience. It's annoying, but it's not the end of the world. You know, we'll get through this. I've gotten through worse. Other people are suffering with a lot worse things on their plate. Like, this isn't so bad. You know, you got to put it in perspective. And, you know, like I said, again, everything goes back to the mindset perspective.
I've had my fair share of living in a what if echo chamber with myself and just trying to navigate life. And it's extremely exhausting, and it makes it so hard to be able to like see the truly beautiful things that you have going on around you. Like, even when you're in the shittiest or crappiest of situations, like I truly do feel like finding the small silver linings were what got me out of
Yeah,
something that I
absolutely.
really didn't think I would make it through. So it's just I pray that we come to a world where people are more prone to searching for the beauty instead of focusing on all the things that are bringing us down, because there's a lot of dense energy. Okay, there's a lot
Yeah.
of it floating around us, and if you give it that power, like
Oh,
it's
yeah.
just it's so, yeah, just draining and gross. And there's a
Absolutely.
lot more light. I think there's a lot more light, and the more we ignite that within ourselves and join together and are able to like kind of have that collective, like, I'm not saying have a group think, I am anti group think, but like at least
Right.
come together as a collective to be more vibrant and light and show each other the
Absolutely.
positives. Like, we can change a lot of things about this world.
We should start a group.
We should. I'm totally here for it.
Yeah,
Totally.
that would be great, wouldn't it? That'd be
Yeah.
great. Yeah, actually, like, you know, the 60s, I think back in the 60s, I was born in 67, so I didn't really live through the 60s, but I think they were trying to do something like that. They were really trying to do peace, harmony, and love, and that was a pretty cool time in life, I think. They were really doing something about the things they didn't believe in, and they were just trying to, I mean, granted, like, you know, probably a lot of diseases came out of that the way they were doing it, but uh, yeah, but their heart was in the right place, you know, like,
Mhm.
and it was a lot of drugs. It wasn't prescription drugs, which I think is probably worse for, you know, but I mean, I it would be great to see the world kind of come together and be like, yeah, peace and harmony and love, and you know, I think that's the only song I know how to play on a piano. I'd like to teach the world to sing. So, but yeah, it would be nice to have a group like that. You know, just, hey, it's okay to love and be happy and love yourself and just love others and just be happy. You know, it's okay. I think sometimes people just need permission. It's okay to
Yeah.
be happy, you
Yeah.
know.
Mhm.
And unfortunately, there's a lot out there in the world that's just, man, they just want to promote so much negativity and hate and division, and it's, we need a group that does the opposite,
Yeah.
you
I
know.
think it definitely keeps people sick, and I think a lot of people have a very big agenda of keeping us sick, whether
Oh
it's
yeah. Oh
mentally,
yeah. Well,
physically, and
we're worth more
spiritually.
sick than we are healthy. That's for
Yeah.
sure. The pharmaceutical company is $1 billion industry, you know, and unfortunately, you know, they don't care about people. They want the money.
Hmm.
Yep.
Like, they just push these pills on everyone. And everyone, you know, instead of doing the work, it's easier to take a pill instead of doing the work, right?
Mhm.
Whether it comes to mindset, illness, losing weight, whatever, I just want to take a pill. I just want something easy,
Mhm.
you know. And the work doesn't have to be hard or horrible. The work is actually fun and joyful and good. So, but it does take work.
I was gonna say, as far as like my realm with the medication, I myself have been through the ringer with that since I was like 17, 18 years old, and I've had some really horrible experiences and some fairly life-changing for the positive experiences. And I feel like I live by this 80/20 of like it's 80% you do, if not even 90% you do, and the
Right.
20 to 10% that might help a potential chemical imbalance. Because I also
Right.
don't want to write off the fact that there are people that
Absolutely.
truly do
Absolutely.
have, chemical imbalances and stuff. So I don't want everyone to think, if
Right.
I'm
Exactly.
anti-stigma on medication, I try really hard to be an advocate of like, if it works for you, that is good. Like, do that.
Right.
However, there are a lot of people that are unnecessarily medicated. And
Absolutely. And I think there's a lot of
so,
kids that are unnecessarily because they're hyper.
mhm.
Maybe they just have a
So
lot of
being
energy
a kid,
because kids are supposed to have a lot of energy and be crazy.
right?
But
Yeah.
yeah, or maybe you're giving them too much sugar. How about cutting back on the sugar instead of popping a pill in their mouth,
Yeah.
So,
What does their
but
diet
you're
look
right.
like?
You're right. There are some cases where medication is important, but you got to do your research because there's a lot of side effects. There's a lot of, I mean, when they ramble off all those things at the very end of the commercial, could suicidal thoughts and
Yep.
death and like whoa, wait. So you got to kind
Anal leakage was always mine. Like as soon as they said anal leakage, is like I don't need anything that they're selling right there. I'm
yeah,
cool.
Yeah.
right,
Whatever
I'm
I
good on
have,
that one.
yeah,
yeah.
whatever I have is not as bad as that right there.
Right, exactly. So you do have to weigh it out, but yeah, there are some cases where medications have saved lives and done some wonderful things for sure. And that's what it was supposed to start out as. Like, antibiotics were made from what? Mold. Like, you know what I mean? They should be natural, like progress. And um, that's what it started out, I think, was the intention with medication to really help, but it just got out of control
Mhm.
with money and greed. And that's where they dropped the ball, you
Hmm.
know?
Yeah. That's why I really dove into, I'm certified master herbalist and I love that
Oh,
because
that's
I
awesome.
really love to dive into like what the natural world has to offer us as medicine. And I really do want to take nature into the mental health realm because I have had such a chaotic experience with it. And there are certain things that can help, St. John's wort with depression and other things that can just like help with different, like I said, chemical imbalances. Now, I don't know too much in order to be like, hey, stop your medication. I'm not a doctor. I would never say
Right.
that. However, it is worth also seeing what
Trying it.
plants and herbs are out there that can, increase certain things while still being safe with a medication regimen or speaking to a naturopathic doctor and your
Yes.
psychiatrist and being able to just be like, okay, maybe we can advise a plan together. Something I realized is that most doctors don't even take a nutrition course, which is crazy to me.
I know.
And like most psychiatrists have no idea about these plant medicines either. So I think
And
there's,
that's why you hope you have a good psychiatrist, psychologist, whatever, that is actually open to, yeah, let's see if this works. That isn't just going to be like, oh, that's ridiculous,
mhm.
because that's dangerous too,
Yep,
Hmm.
I agree.
for sure. But yeah, I do the same thing. I have all kinds of natural supplements. In fact, last night I just finally tried a grounding mat on my mattress. That's like the new thing. So I'm like, oh, I'm curious,
Mhm.
So I
I
just
was
started.
gonna ask, you mentioned that you were a Reiki master. I am certified in Holy Fire, and I'm just curious, what modalities do you use additional modalities in any of your,
Well,
like
I was
upper?
infused with the violet flame of Saint Germain, so that's kind of my thing that I
Mhm.
like to work with. But I just naturally work with people and their energy, and everything is different. I don't have a set regimen. I do what I feel is right, and sometimes I get messages. And at first, I used to discount them. Like I used to always say, "Well, I'm not not a psychic or I'm not a medium." And I used to discount it, and they'd be like, "Well, you're getting messages and they're correct. So why do you always discount it?" Because I was like, "Well, I'm not that." But sometimes messages do come to us and we shouldn't be like, I'm not a medium. I can't, because sometimes we are. Everybody is.
Mhm.
It's just whether you tap into it or not. So sometimes I get messages, and sometimes I'm afraid to bring them up, because one lady, I was like, did you lose a child? Because I felt like this presence of a little boy, and it was her son. Like, I felt it. I knew it, but I was afraid to bring it up, because I was like, what if I'm wrong? What if, like, and what if she doesn't want to talk about it? She was like, yes, and she was just so happy that, that came through. So, different modalities. I do hands-on. I do like to feel the energy, and I also do hands off, so, and sometimes I do sign language while it just comes naturally, like growth, and I just do, I spin chakras. Sometimes I feel like they're stuck, so I spin them. Like, there's
Mhm.
just all different.
And yeah, very unique to the person and the
Yeah, and that's
client.
why when
Yeah.
someone says, "Well, I had a great experience with Reiki," or "I had a bad experience with Reiki," and they just go into that mindset, to every Reiki practitioner, you have to kind of be like, you got to go into each one knowing that all of us are different in our practice, and and it's a beautiful thing, actually.
Yeah, no expectations.
Yeah.
Lloyd,
Yeah, you
do
hit.
you have
No, I
something you want
think
to
it's
share?
no. It's been great, man. I have had pretty much a great time, man. You guys hit
Yeah, me
everything
too.
in here. Shirley, if you could just give yourself a shout out, man. Let people know where they can find you on socials. Talk about your book, where they can find your book, and what you have coming up in the future, and your courses, and if you're doing any type of speaking.
You can find me at shirleybuck.com, and on there you can schedule a 45-minute free consultation, just to talk and see if we're a good fit, see if, or to ask for some advice that, you don't have to buy the course. You don't have to, just, feel comfortable talking to me for 45 minutes. The link is there on my website. The book is on Amazon. It's on the website of Barnes and Nobles. And I was just told recently it was at Target or Walmart or something like that. I don't know. Which I was surprised, but you can find the book if you look, Sweet Freedom Whispered in My Ear. Amazon's probably the easiest place to get it. Sweet Freedom Whispered in My Ear ties in with the song by Elton John, Someone Saved My Life Tonight, because that song actually describes the whole night that my mom died. And it's kind of, I can go through play. Obviously, I don't have time to do that, but um, you almost had me altar bound. They're talking probably marriage. I'm talking like in a coffin, but the whole
Mm.
song actually describes it. I sent a copy to Elton and Bernie. I don't know if they got it. But so Sweet Freedom Whispered in My Ear is based off that song. So it's kind of a little tidbit, and maybe not everyone would know. And then, yeah, I mean, I just want to tell people that, there's a way out, and you just have to learn how to think,
Mm, I
you
love
just
that
have to
so
learn how to
much.
think.
Do you have anything coming up, Shirley? Are you working on another book, or
Um,
I don't know
I
if you can share that or not, but I don't
I
want to.
do want to write two more books. That is in my future, but this one's still so new, and I'm
Hmm.
still going. I mean, I'm a first time author, so I'm just absorbing. I'm living in the moment.
Right.
But I do want to write about dating after trauma and abuse, and parenting after trauma and abuse. So those are two books I do want to write. And
That's
just,
amazing. I'm super
try to help to heal the world,
when you're
That's
doing
good. Yeah.
the divine work, and I'm super excited that we were able to have you on the podcast. I truly, here we
Thank
believe in divine
you.
timing, and you
Yeah.
have shown up just in time. So thank you so much for sharing
Thank
your
you so
story
much.
and
Thank you for having
being
me.
so vulnerable with us. I know that's not always easy, and walking that line can be, sometimes hard, but it's a beautiful cause. And we'll make sure to leave all of Shirley's information down in the description box so you can find her and her book. And if you want to come back anytime, please let us know.
Oh,
It
that'd
has
be
been
great.
amazing.
Yeah, that'd be
Thank you.
great. I really enjoyed it. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. All right. Bye, guys.
Bye
See you.
bye.